Montgomery County Mud 6 to order. First, do we have any comments from the public? No comments from the public, then we'll move on to item 3, the president's and director's comments. Anyone have any comments?
Not today.
No, I'd like to make just a couple. Tomorrow is the last SJRA meeting at which Jace will be presiding. He will be leaving at the end of the month. And I think all of us should thank him for what he has done over the years. There will be a resolution that Bob Lilac and some others put together being passed out today, as I understand it. And
A couple things I'll report on.
and we will probably vote on it next month. And it's got more whereases than the development of the United States, but it does do a nice job in recommending what should happen and getting some of the facts out about what did happen. And I think all of us should be willing to look at it and hopefully sign it. Secondly, as you all know, I was planning to resign the presidency today anyway, just so I could get on with some other things. But 4 weeks ago yesterday, I fell and broke my pelvis and fractured my skull. And I have slowed down since then. I'm not quite the person I used to be. So that it is more imperative than ever that I move on and take a lesser role. So I look forward to our elections today. And I would like to thank all the staff and all my fellow colleagues on the board for helping me for the past several years off and on as I've been president. I have really appreciated what you've done, and I think we have a good, healthy organization. Okay. And with that, let's move on to item 4, receive and act on request from adjustments to relief from specific charges. Don't have any change? Right? Okay. Item 5, the consent agenda. We've got 6 items. Anybody have any comments that they would like to make or move any of these items from the consent agenda?
I just had a question on item 10. I suppose it's to you, Brian, where it's talking about filing a form.
Yeah, that's a standard housekeeping item.
Yeah.
We can, but that's something we have.
It's just, I remember we switched from the elections here to the county.
Still got a ballot.
So it's with the county in the future.
Yeah, so if y'all want to promote it, we can go through it, but it's the same requirement regardless of whether your election is conducted by the county or if it's conducted.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving to the regular agenda, item 11, election of officers of the Board of Directors and approval of district registration form in connection therewith. Brian, we start with the president and then we'll work our way down to trustee.
Depending on what the results of the nominee for president are, if that creates a vacancy, then we kind of work through it. Otherwise, then other positions can stay the same.
Okay.
So we'll just open it up for nomination for
All right.
president.
Do we have any nominations for president of the board?
I'd like to nominate Deborah Sargent.
I'd second that. Anyone else? Annette?
Yeah, so it's just a matter of, are there
All in
any
favor?
nominations?
Aye.
Elected. All right, Deborah as vice president, so we have a vice presidential opening.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
All right, now
That's it.
we have a vacancy at secretary treasurer, so we need a nomination for our secretary. Really, that's who has to sign the most documents, because you're signing minutes and you're attesting president's signatures on documents, so.
I would nominate Neil.
I'll second that.
Go. I'm good.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
And we're still going to give, we have a vacancy for one of our assistant secretaries, so if somebody wants to.
Oh, no, we have two assistant secretaries.
We have one because one of them was Neil.
Okay.
So it would be you. for-
That'd be me by default.
Yes.
Again, that's a feeling of deja vu, by the way.
Yeah.
I think I've done this before.
Goes around, comes around.
So we need a motion on the nomination, if there's a nomination for Bruce to be assistant secretary, is there a nomination?
I nominate.
Vote on that. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Not have on the agenda an item to consider changing any of the trustee positions, so those would stay the same unless y'all want to consider that. That would be a future agenda. So
okay,
you would remain, Bruce, for instance, you would remain the second alternate as trustee, just your officer position on the
Okay.
board changed.
okay,
Same for Neil, he would remain the trustee, even though he's no longer the second assistant secretary, you're the secretary. Those change.
Okay.
okay. Madam President, would you like to take the agenda? Run the meeting. That's what I've been waiting for.
You're on the clock.
We go. Countdown.
And before, I have a 2:30 medical appointment. I've got to leave here at 2:15, so if I disappear, I understand why.
Thank you. Item 12, receive and act upon and staff information regarding the upcoming MCAD Director, Board of Directors election for the term of office January the 1st, 2024 through December 2020.
Last month, reported that Metro Mud had taken the first step in the process, which was to acknowledge their interest in getting involved in the election, and that happened. The next step is to nominate someone. Metro this week nominated Arthur Breederhoff and for that, for the potential special district position. And so there's no action to be taken today unless you want to make someone.
I make a motion to nominate Arthur Breederhoff.
I second.
But there's no action, you said.
There's no,
There's no
It's
action.
not necessary.
Okay.
okay. All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Support.
Developer update from Grogan's Mill Village Center.
I know that Rhonda was planning to be here. She had a medical procedure this week and said that she wasn't gonna be able to make it.
Okay, Deborah, I think Aaron and I can do it. Aaron most recently had a meeting with Jim Carmen, what, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, and this might be something we put on future agendas. I mean, based on the current timing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Just defer that.
Okay, we'll defer that to next meeting,
Yeah.
please.
It was well written up in our, we put out a bi-weekly newsletter from the Grover's Mill Village Association. And there's a long article on what the relative positions are between NOAC and Carmen. Oh, you got to sign up for it.
Oh,
Okay, 14, receive the Senior Center River Authority Woodlands Division report.
Good afternoon. I have a few items to cover. The first is actually on the trustees report, page 58. At the trustees meeting, Ed made a statement related to Chase Houston and his resignation. Want to point that out to you. I can read the statement if you'd like, or you can read it, but it's essentially what Bruce had said at the beginning. The River Authority is still going to move forward. Tomorrow at the Board of Trustees, or excuse me, the Board of Directors meeting, they'll announce an acting general manager and engage a search firm to find a new general manager. Estimated time is 6 to 9 months to find somebody to replace. If you have any questions, I can try to answer it.
Did they have the interview?
Everybody will know tomorrow. I'm sure they have an idea, but they haven't shared it. The next item I have, we do not have an update on the infrastructure funding. When it comes to the Woodlands Division FY24 budget, reminder that next month is when we ask the MUDs to vote, or excuse me, to direct their trustee on how to vote at the August trustees meeting. So wholesale rate increase is proposed 2% on the water side, 2% on wastewater. And then GRP is not going to increase.
So that's in line with what was presented to us before.
Yes, ma'am. No changes. Also, just a reminder, you're only voting on the FY 24 O&M budget, which is that increase we just talked about. You're not voting on the entire 10-year plan and all the projects related to that. That's at another time in the future. Last thing that I have that Dan's going to assist with starts on page 36 and runs through page 41. So we have received 16 questions from 2 MUD directors related to HC1.
Yes.
You're both.
So we've gone through and we've answered all but 3 of those questions. Those last 3 questions are questions 9, 10, and 11. We looked at those 3 and answer 9 and 10. We feel it'll cost about $175,000. Question number 11, it's to be determined. So y'all can go through, read the questions, responses, so on and so forth, but to get data and to spend $175,000, basically, it's not going to move the needle. It may reprioritize some of the lines that need to be done, but it's using our existing data, which it's not bad, it's just not complete, because there's additional things you would need to get something that would actually show better data if you. So our recommendation is not to move forward with $175,000 to do the additional data, because you're just going to shuffle the pieces, but they're going to stay in the same 10 years.
It doesn't change the decision. So if you were to spend that money, it'd be a waste. You would lose value.
In our opinion, agree.
It would take 6 to 9 months. So when
And then you're deferring.
Now, there is discussion, and I know Eric, you said it good earlier, and I forgot the exact wording, but there's a lot of questions on the testing of the AC pipe. You know, have you tested it? How do you get more data from this point forward, collect better data, so on and so forth? Entirely agree with all of it, but there are studies that have articles. AWWA does a lot of articles, WEF does articles, peer-to-peer peer articles, and so on and so forth that's been passed out. One thing to keep in mind if y'all read those, I don't know if they've been passed out to everybody. I forgot who sent me them, but one thing I'm trying to stress is a lot of those studies look at just the pipe itself. So they're studying, is the structural integrity of the pipe good? Is it leaching calcium, so on and so forth, but it's all centered around the pipe. So if you read those studies, it says the pipe may be good and last for 100, 140 years, but you need to study everything else around it. The system, I'm calling it, the dirt, the water that goes through it, the installation, was there bedding, so on and so forth. You have gaskets that are made of basically a neoprene or something like that. So just trying to say, y'all want to do more studying, more testing is perfectly fine. We'll do whatever we can, and majority of the MUDs agreed to and pay for. But I just don't want y'all just to look at just the pipe itself and say, well, the pipe's gonna last 100 years, so you're fine, don't do it. There's a lot more other aspects you need to evaluate and look at. So throw that out there. Don't know if you have anything to add, Eric.
Yeah, just through the MUD meetings so far, there's definitely some growing interest in not necessarily doing the 175, but doing, the idea is to create a more robust program that would truly identify the condition of the existing pipe, put it into a different programming. There's several municipalities around the United States that have done this, and they did it a little bit differently than evaluating it off of age. They took pipe out of the ground, they put it in labs, they tested it, they crushed it, they did a lot of different things, and then put it into a program. So there's talk about considering something like that. Like Chris said, taking the data that we have, which is somewhat limited, and shoving that back into a desktop study for $150,000 isn't going to do anything. Most likely, it's just going to shuffle things around. No appreciable change. What's being discussed in this other manner, building a more robust valuation program might have some value. And so more to come on that. It's kind of new. We're evaluating it. It's not real common in Texas. It's just, we've been doing this for a long time, and there's not a lot of other entities that least documented that we can find that have done what some of these other municipalities around the country have already done. So we're kind of investigating right now.
Any idea of the cost of that?
Not yet. That's
That would be, I think,
in your
more-
packet. That's that TBD
Oh,
line
okay.
item.
Chris, how many miles of AC pipe do we have in the system? What percentage?
The River Authority has 48 miles of AC pipe. Collectively, we have 140 miles. So 40%, 35, 40%.
WWA has quite a bit.
Good, so it's a good percentage, would make a big difference potentially.
It could, you know, like he said, some of these municipalities have determined that they can, instead of 50 years, they can push it out 70, 80, 90, 100 or more. And so more to come.
Do you have any feel for those other municipalities that have undertaken these studies? What parts of the United States are located in, north, south, east, west?
Yeah, well, there was, one of them is in California. There was a study done by, in the University of Arkansas. And then there was another, article passed around. I can't remember the location where that was, but it's, all over. And one of the issues that we have to consider is, any study that's done somewhere else is going to have different characteristics.
What you're looking for.
Yeah.
Different rain, different soil types, faults, you know, all the various things that we know we may have here.
Yep.
Affect the pipe differently.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't need to be taken into consideration. So. More to come.
So we've used a risk analysis approach for asset management, right? So, and that is fundamentally based on an assessment of age, condition, as far as we're aware. So the change to the database you're talking about would imply the acquisition of new information.
Correct.
Okay.
Development of new information,
So-
i.e. maybe it's digging some pipe up, maybe it's doing the first project and in the bore pits, taking that pipe out, because you gotta open it up anyway.
Right.
Maybe starting a program where you start to take pipe out of the ground, you start to analyze and test it and start building that database with better data.
So that's going to be a long-term kind of
Longer term, yeah.
Years, yes.
Well,
It
you've
might
got,
take a few years.
yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So
Yeah.
we're looking out into the future to build the new quote unquote, well-organized or well-populated database.
And it may say, oh, you gotta do it now, or it may say,
Yeah.
no, we can push it off.
Right.
But the idea is that at least it would tell us that specifically.
Okay.
Whether it will, I mean, that's to be determined, but, that's the idea, that's the concept that's being discussed.
That's all I have unless you have any other questions. Oh, yeah. You also have.
Oh, hi, Dan.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Real quick, I wanted to highlight it because we've been spending a lot of time on it, not a lot of recent discussion at the MUD meetings. But we've been working diligently on the wastewater strategic planning and the phase 2 of that. So that is something that is going to come up again in the near future. So next week, we have on June 27th, Tuesday, starting at 5 o'clock at SDRA's office, an all MUD meeting to come in and provide y'all with an update on what we have been progressing with in this phase 2 and ultimately the capacity recommendation for the new wastewater treatment facility. So that is going to be the highlight of next week. So encourage you all to participate in that. I think that's all we have for 12, 14. So unless there's any other questions on 14, you want to move on to Spring Creek 15.
Yeah.
So quick update on Spring Creek Detention Study. Last month, we did have what we feel was a successful public meeting here at the Woodlands Township, had around 100 people show up. So I think that went well. And the update on the project is, last week, we did receive contact from the solar company. And a little bit out of the blue, but they want to start talking to us about the potential for any opportunities to coexist out there, a solar farm and flood detention facilities. So as y'all know, that has been a big hurdle on the project up until this point. No agreements, no decisions made, just a very initial discussions on, is there anything that we could potentially cooperate on? So there will be more updates to come on that piece.
Go ahead.
And Dan, when are they planning to start putting water in that detention?
Put water in the detention.
Yeah,
So right now, there is no defined schedule for design or construction, so
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think I can answer that.
Do you think the change in, I guess, footprint of the proposed project might have influenced solar, the solar people?
It's possible. So that's
Yeah.
one thing we did present at the recent public meeting is the optimization of
That's
the
right.
footprint of
Right.
the detention facility. So that may have
that was my friend.
something to do with it.
Okay.
Now that we're a little bit farther into the
Right.
planning, we
Right.
got here's really what we need. So yeah, we're looking forward to discussing further with them. Ultimate goal right now is, I believe, by the end of April, we're looking to have a final report for the Texas Water Development Board and all our partners, including yourself. So that's, unless you have any other questions, that's update there.
Thank you.
Yep, good job.
Before we go to the attorney's report, I see that our developer representative has shown up. Would you like to give us an update?
Sorry, I was.
No worries.
So as far as the Grogan's Mill Village Center land swap, I know that's on everybody's mind right now. There's not a lot to tell. I've been getting a lot of phone calls about it. The county is, obviously you saw probably Commissioner's Court last week. We went through the memorandum of understanding, but there's still a lot of work that has to be done. So appraisals are in, we're trying to figure that out because obviously the land swap has to be equal. And just so you understand, a lot of people don't know this. I know Aaron probably does and Bruce as well. The land that's being swapped is just the area where the Randall's pad site sits. So the rest of the retail, you will maintain. But again, we still have to come to an agreement with the county on the price. That hasn't been, we don't have that final stamp of approval to where we can even start going forward with design. I know that a lot of people are really calling on the county to bring those numbers to the table of the why. Because I think a lot of people aren't real excited about tearing down the library and the current community center. So I think that there's a little bit more homework that's going to have to be done on that part as well. So it's going to be a very long process. Do y'all have any questions for me?
No.
And I guess, is this, Ryan, to where I can ask a question? Okay.
Yeah, this is a separate agenda.
Just out of curiosity, I guess one of the things too is if I told someone today, we want to hear your voice, your opinion matters, come to Commissioner's Court, come to the township meeting. We definitely want to know what the community is thinking. I don't think we're at a place where we can hold a town hall meeting yet, but we do want to know. And I think that the county needs to know, the township needs to know. So we're just one side of the deal. I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you.
Bruce, it's so good to see you. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you, Rhonda.
Okay, Ryan.
Yes, ma'am. So if y'all have had a chance to check the Google Drive this morning, we had our legislative update get released hot off the press yesterday evening. So at your leisure, take a look at that. It's as usual, comprehensive, 27 pages, I believe, this year. It goes into some of the issues that are still outstanding between the House and the Senate. Property tax relief and school vouchers, school choice. Very, as usual, very active session. And we've got some bills to implement. A lot of the bills that we talked about that were still hanging around last month did not ultimately pass. The bill we talked about that would have prohibited the use of public funds for lobbying efforts, that did not pass on the House side. It did pass the Senate. The bill that would have allowed for more flexibility for virtual meetings, that one did not make it. the bill that would have required for directors to be landowners and not as an alternative qualification to just be a resident or renter. That bill did not pass either. So the passage rate was pretty consistent with prior sessions, even though there was a number of more additional bills. I can't remember what the percentage was increase. It went from 6,000 some to 8,000, but the passage rate stayed the same. It was about 15%, a little over 15%. So we'll be working in the coming months as we do each session on implementing bills that are of impact to our district clients and coming back to you with agenda items in the future to deal with this. Happy to answer questions if you have them.
Thank you. Item 17, consider adoption of resolution concerning the developed district status for the 2023 tax year.
Yes, finally. So I think that might be up there on top. So Deborah, you'll get to sign that now as president.
I didn't sign it.
Okay.
I saved it for.
First act as president. So the engineer did go back, look at the numbers again, and I'm not sure what the deal was with the previous calculation. But y'all
Typo.
you did remain developed.
Mhm.
So that was what struck us as a little odd when you were going from development to
I
development.
think you just put them in the wrong boxes.
So y'all are developed, nothing's changed, same as last year. It'll be subject to the 3.5% rollback rate as you were prior
For
years.
years.
So Bruce did sign these.
Oh, we did?
No, no, sign it again.
Now it's to the secretary.
Oh, okay, comes back to me.
We do need a motion on that. I'm 17.
Do you have a motion? to accept?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item 18, receive and act upon the recommendation of award for the retail wastewater collection system rehabilitation project number 22W09035.
All right, at long last, on June 1st, bids were received for the project. This is sanitary sewer rehabilitation, pipe rehabilitation. There was one bidder. The low bidder's name is Texas Pride Utilities. The low bid amount was $1,238,280. The engineer's cost estimate was just over 1.6, almost 1.7. So the engineer is making, despite the fact that there was only one bidder, which usually you'd like to have more competitively. So discussed it with the bidder. The actual price was well under the engineer's estimate. So that is a good sign. Garver has gone ahead and given a recognition award for the project. So we would need concurrence with that, if you so choose. There's, I believe, 5 districts that have a share in it.
Just 4.
4, there you go. You are one.
Questions, comments? Have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second,
I will second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 19, consider and act on Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District Phase 3 substance study, if I could talk.
Yes, in your packet, there's a letter that we received on your behalf from Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District. They are going into phase 3 of their subsidence study. The letter, as it's written, which was from late May, indicates a request for potential assistance and funding, as well as it talks a little bit about identification of some potential core sites. The map that's included has some general sites essentially scattered or across the county. Those are not specific. Those are just general for kind of an equal scattering to identify subsidence across those different areas. Earlier this week at the SRA GRP meeting, Jim Spagner reported that they weren't necessarily interested in the funding piece of that, but more interested right now in the location of those sites. He indicated there were 2 sites that they're considering, and then SRA noted, Edge Hepford noted that they may have 2 other sites as well to consider. But no action was necessarily taken. So not sure that there's any action for you to take at this point. But that was for.
I just note on the letter, please reach out to the district by June 13th. Can we get this letter amended by a Lone Star or?
No, but
Okay.
And Samantha certainly isn't going to do it.
Oh, yeah, that's
Like that, or like manager?
say again,
Was that her last act as general manager?
don't know.
Yeah.
She's retiring, right? Or
He's
resigning.
resigning.
So, and. You gonna say something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, Chris, didn't SJRA, drill and log a well on the west side of the Woodlands some years ago?
Well, 39 out in basically, Cave Valley, went down to Catahoula, came back up. I
Okay,
don't know what the log is like. I know we were going for water samples.
right.
But I can see if we have some of that data to pass along.
Okay. And my only suggestion, as far as geophysical logging goes, is not a triple combo, but a quad combo. That includes sonic, shear, and compressional. Because you need that for some other parameters to do the calculation related to compressibility.
General manager report?
Okay, thank you. And then, few items to report. Jeannie and I received a presentation from Arthur and the chief appraiser of MCAD, Janet Jennings Doyle, last week, where they presented the proposed 2024 MCAD budget. Just a couple highlights. It was a good presentation, good for me to understand kind of how MCAD goes through the process. But 2 of the highlights that came out of the budget are one that are, I would say, significant, at least changes. One is they are considering new software. I believe their software is about 15 years old and they're needing to make an upgrade on that. I think it's a 5-year investment to get that paid. And then there were some increases on the ARB board or ARB line items to address the increasing level of protests that the review board is having to go through over the last few.
What happens when you raise the rates?
Sure. So those were the highlights. Arthur, anything that it?
I think you covered highlights. What's important is we're dealing with a lot of growth, benefit taxing authorities. It is a partnership between the CAD and the taxing authorities. And we need to change our software to become more effective and efficient with software that people can support today. Our software today is 15 years old, as Eric indicated. You can't find upgrades. You can't find maintenance first. So we want to be ahead of the curve, just like we're talking about AC water lines. When do you replace? Well, we reached that decision. It's time to replace at 24. But Eric, I think you covered the highlights, so thank you.
Okay. A couple other things, as you just noted, Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District did receive the resignation of its general manager. I just want to point out that in 2023, by the end of it, that will mark all 3 major water agencies in Montgomery County will have new leadership. WWA, SJRA, Lone Star. A pretty significant change in the water industry in Montgomery County. So
Yeah.
More to come on that. Just a couple of things to point out in my report. One was that Mike, we have a service 10-year awards. Mike today is actually 19 years with WWA.
Congratulations, Michael.
And then Dan Kennard, inspector for us, 44 years.
Yeah, well,
In May.
awesome.
Pretty amazing. I did want to, I think Bruce mentioned it earlier. There is a resolution concerning SJRA water management that Bruce alluded to earlier. It's not on your agenda for action. It made it onto some agendas, mud agendas. It didn't make it on yours and a couple others. This is a resolution that was originally drafted by a director in Mud One. And it has evolved. It was probably a month or so ago when a lot of the legislative maneuvering was going on. That is all complete, and this document has morphed, I guess, and changed over the last few weeks. And so just to give you some insight, there's a couple districts who was on the agenda of have decided to work with me to finalize the verbiage and then authorize their president to sign it. Those that did not have it on the agenda are contemplating and have so far decided to put it on their July agenda for completion and execution, but to work with me behind the scenes on whatever changes there might be.
I think that would be the desire of this board too.
Ready? Last month, I brought to your attention that would like to start having a public education outreach update on all the great things we're doing with the PEC and what John Geiger is doing. And so with that continuation of that, I'd like to have John up.
John?
Page 63 of your packet has the monthly communication. So in June, we just moved into the third quarter of our strategic plan. Each quarter, as you'll remember, has a focus. The second quarter was water quality. Third quarter is going to be focusing on water conservation. So you'll see a shift in some of our marketing and other materials. Tracking some metrics that are encouraging, I wanted to point out. Might be suggesting we're gaining some traction with our strategic plan. Our page views are up significantly. See that second bullet there on our website, up 34% over 2022 for page views and 43% for a 5-year average. So if you look at our monthly page views, 5 of our 9 biggest months ever have been January through May of this year. The other 4 were associated with major events, Winter Storm Uri and so forth. So that's encouraging. Still very early in the process, a lot of ways to look at this stuff, but that is a good sign. We'll keep tracking that. Also, some encouraging data coming out of our emails. So that's a big tool for us, our weekly irrigation recommendation and newsletter. We send that out every Monday morning at 9, guiding folks in how to water their lawn for the week. And then other content on lawn and landscape and care tips, water-wise use, and so forth. So the open rate for that continues to climb. We're up 11% over the past 12 months. We're 56%. So over half the folks that get that email actually open it up to look at it. And then once they're in it, they're engaging with it. And one way to track that is through a click rate. So that's where they'll actually click on a hot link embedded somewhere in the email. So we've seen a rise in that click rate of 50% over the last 12 months. Again, they're opening it and they're engaging.
Does it also count them if they open it twice?
No.
So it's just once per email.
One other important aspect of that newsletter is that it feeds a lot of our social media, where we get a lot of our content. It is from that. Marketing, major outlets there, community impact. We continue to do print and digital advertising with them. Chronicle is all digital. And then the Woodlands Community Magazine is an important tool for us. So that's a 2/3 page ad each month, and then an article as well. June's was the current one is on CCRs. First, we're sending those out this month. So that's timely. And then July, watch for a piece on a water loss reduction from AMI. And then August will be a water conservation focus. Well, we're starting to ramp up what we're doing as far as infrastructure, shining the light on infrastructure and trying to increase value throughout the community in our infrastructure and keeping that stuff in good shape. So on the next page, page 64 at the bottom, you'll just see some samples of some of the content we're pushing out that focuses on infrastructure. And of course, we're going to see a lot more of that soon, especially as we bring on the communications consultants for the infrastructure renewal initiative. That consultant, the proposal for that consultant were due on Friday. We've been given those by the River Authority. So Eric, Dr. Gaynor, myself, and members of the EDC will review those proposals, will provide input to the River Authority proposals, and we hope to have that consultant secured by late August. Any questions?
Is the is the water ambassador program still active?
It is. The same ambassador.
In all the villages?
I'm sorry?
In all the villages?
Yes.
Okay. I was noticing in my little part of Grogan's Mill,
You seeing watering
they
off
could be a little
schedule?
more, yeah, they could be a little more active.
Oh,
I have a friend that got nailed by one of them.
Oh, good.
if you will let me know, an email, a phone call, a conversation in the hall. I pass that on directly to the ambassadors and they will get right over there.
I hate to do
Put
that.
that on their hot.
I hate to do that as a neighbor. I'd rather have the water ambassadors find it. Take care. Kind of like how the township operates. You know.
Okay, yeah.
There's two of them, so it's hard to get, everyone.
That's what I'm wondering. Two of them enough.
But-
When we're going through defined irrigation.
But feedback is vital though, too. So if you see stuff driving around, let us know. We may have seen it or maybe we haven't.
I'll tell you what, you tell me who it is and I'll turn it down.
A couple things.
To do that.
A couple things to note on that. So we are not, it has not been our policy for some time to apply surcharges to residents. We're simply there to educate them. Most folks just aren't aware. So our ambassadors are great about taking a friendly approach, an educational approach.
We have enough of them?
I'm sorry?
Do we have enough of them for the Woodlands? Two ambassadors for?
Well, the other challenge we have is most folks are, most folks are watering at night off schedule. And so our ambassadors are working from 7 in the morning until roughly 8, 9 o'clock at night. So they're not there at 2, 3 in the morning. A lot of the waterings happen. So if we see obvious signs, they will still hang the door hanger. But it's hard to catch them in the act as it were. They used to do that and they ran into some complications, unsafe situations. So now they're operating at different hours. So.
Okay. Tell me who it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I had under the general manager's report.
Trustees reports?
Okay, well, much of this has been covered by Eric and John. The next PC meeting coming up in 7th of July, and then follow up. Oh, sorry, the 12th of July, and then a follow up in August. So Woodlands Water will be part of the RFP process. However, that being said, the selection will be entirely the responsibility of the SJRA, but we can provide input because we're really joined at the hip in this challenge. The only thing I reported on last month was the amended regional flood plan for the San Jacinto River Basin. The estimated costs of these projects are, how shall we say, eye-watering. And on page 61, you'll see the 3 flood mitigation projects, flood management strategies, and flood management evaluations. So there's going to be a whole challenge ahead of us as to how to prioritize and then get funding. With that,
Did want to add one thing. The trustees did vote to authorize me to write a letter of accommodation for Dace Houston. That is going to be completed today, and I plan to present that and read it to the board of directors for us trade tomorrow at their meeting.
excellent. Okay.
There's no need for us to recess into. Okay. Are there any agenda items for next month's meeting that anybody would like added?
Well, we discussed the resolution concerning Jace. Other than that, no. I don't believe so.
And approval or correction to your trustee on approval of the River Authority budget.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's I will adjourn our meeting.
2:15. Good job. Right.